This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to my Monday night show. I'm Hannah Wilson, and tonight on Teacher Talk Radio we're going to be talking about springing into well-being. I'm spending my Easter holidays down with my sister in Cornwall, and we're going to be discussing the work-life balance, or our lack thereof it. How to prioritise your own mental health without guilt. Or can we? Feel free to message or call in during the show.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
So, in light of the survey by the DofE that was leaked last week, it got me thinking about teacher wellbeing and workload. It surveyed 11,000 people, and it said that a quarter of teachers are working over 12-hour days. And then this increases in senior leadership, but it has gone down slightly, but it's still not sustainable, I believe. So in 2016, they cited that senior leaders generally work 60.5 hours a week. In 2019, it was 55.1 hours a week. And in 2022, it was 56.8 hours a week. But 2 in 5 leaders work more than 60-hour weeks. And I think that's the thing, that we're just working huge amounts. So it's really important that we're taking care of ourselves and balancing it. 1 in 5 teachers work at least 60 hours a week, and that's not leaders, just normal teachers, and most is spent on tasks that aren't teaching. So more than half of it is actually spent on other tasks that's not teaching. So we need to think about that, and the fact that how do we balance our work-life balance, and how do we say no and kind of prioritise things or get things done in a more timely fashion, but also how do we cut out the bits that aren't necessary. So 7 in 10 say that workload is unacceptable, and I think that's very true across all schools. It's not a specific area or a specific type of school that feels that, or a type of teacher. I think everyone feels it, and it's important to think about that when we're teaching. So we need to think about how, I think firstly, we reduce our workload. I know for myself, I have a very long to-do book. I don't even have a to-do list. It's too much that I have to have a to-do book, and I kind of work my way through that. But I will prioritise it. I'll circle them or colour code them into my things I definitely need to get done by a certain amount of time, and then my next level, and then things that are less important but I want to get done at some point. And I think that's the thing with teachers, is we're very dedicated and we always want to be improving and do what's best for the students and make it better. But it's this never-ending kind of cycle that we never quite have enough time to do the things that we want to do, the things that are the extra, the cherries on the cake, because we're so busy with working with everything else. Let me introduce my sister, Vicky. Hello.
Hello.
What do you do to reduce your workload?
I don't. I'm really bad at that.
See, like the truth being that my sister was sat next to me on another laptop writing an EHCP before doing this. So, and I've been doing work. I think it is, even in the holidays, we do work. Everyone is this like, oh, teachers have so much holiday, like they clock off at 3 o'clock, but in reality we're working really long hours that people just don't understand the amount of effort that goes into teaching and the amount of hours that it takes and the amount that it does outside of school. How many days would you say that you work past 3 o'clock?
Every day.
I would say every day. I have the odd day where I leave early to be able to pick up my son, but then as soon as I put him to bed, I then work in the evening. So even if there are days where I'm like, oh, I can leave for childcare reasons, I need to go pick up my son. I then finding other points in the day where I am kind of working, and I think that's the thing. We have very important roles that we're very good at putting the children first, but we're not very good as teachers at putting ourselves first.
No, definitely not. I think I just think about what you're making me think about it today, because we've been chatting about it a lot today. I try not to work on a Friday when I get home, but quite often still end up working on a Friday as well. So that's sort of my day when I try not to do anything in the evening. But yeah, Monday to Thursday, I'm sort of leaving school about 5 o'clock, 5:30 because of childcare, and then sort of doing the childcare thing in the evening, and then starting work again as soon as they're in bed. But that probably happens on 50% of Fridays as well.
That's the thing. My childcare days where I can stay late are my Mondays and Fridays, but I run out of energy by the time I hit my Friday. I do stay and get a little bit done, but it is really hard to get motivated to do that extra on a Friday. I tend to do, it'll tend to be more on a Saturday night or a Sunday that I'll then actually find the energy to do it. And I think that's the interesting bit, is that you said that you like on Friday I'm going to leave at this time, and I think that's important as staff, is that you try and give yourself one day, right, I'm going to leave at this time, that's going to be the day that I don't work, that's going to be when I don't do that extra thing. And I think that can really help in terms of making yourself do that. I remember I was at a school very heavily pregnant. I think I was a good 7 months at that point, and I was there working till 7 o'clock at night trying to get stuff done ready for when I was off and make sure all the lessons were there for when I was gone. And I remember the deputy coming round and be like, you need to go home, you shouldn't be here, go home. And I think unless we're told, we don't go home. But it's also one of those, who tells the middle leaders to go home? Who tells the senior leaders enough is enough, you need to go home? And because I think that's the thing, it's because ironically, looking at kind of teacher tap, they actually said that the lower ages are more struggle with the work-life balance. So looking at this one, there was a question that said, have any of the following caused you to feel stressed or unhappy at work over the last 2 weeks? So, and there were lots of different things listed, but 81% of teachers in their 20s said that the work-life balance caused them stress. 77% in their 30s, 73% in their 40s, and 67% in their over 50s. So maybe we need to get Mum back up here and give us some advice, teaching in her 70s, of how we de-stress from teaching.
Well, she's just applied to go back into school.
Although, yeah,
as well.
she's just gone in to do invigilating, so she can't get enough of education. But it's interesting that actually the younger students that I think are finding the work-life balance stressful, whereas I think the older ones perhaps are more used to it.
Yeah.
Perhaps they're more happily go, no, that's not in my job description, I'm not going to do that. And I think there's that thing. I know that a couple of people on Teacher Talk Radio were talking about that on Twitter, like that you can have great teachers that say no, get the work-life balance right, and still get the same out of their students without having to give them everything. But there are still teachers that can do the extra hours and put in the extra time, and they still get the results. So it's you don't have to do that to get the results, but there's a lot of pressure to, but you shouldn't feel pressure to. It should be if you want to.
But I think as well, what you were saying about with that survey, in about most of it, less than half of it is on actual teaching. And I know obviously I'm a senior leader, and obviously, as you've already said, I'm a Senko, so a lot of what I do isn't teaching.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes I think, I just can't leave that to tomorrow, because it's going to have a real direct effect on a child's life.
Well, I was going to say, I think your role has this pressure more than any other role, because essentially it's going to have a massive impact on their life, and that it's going to have that strong thing. It seems a bit silly in the news that teachers are being told that it's now our jobs to report child abuse. I mean, I don't know a single teacher that wouldn't report child abuse or hasn't done it, and it just seems like there's a lot of disconnect to what actually teachers do.
I know, but like we were saying yesterday when that came out, it's like, well, haven't they read Casey? Because every single teacher has done. So obviously, whoever wrote that report is not really aware of what we do in schools.
And no teacher is going to be like, oh, that child's potentially in a harmful situation, but I'm going to go home. Like, that's just not in anybody's situations. I think majority of teachers, even if we'd probably even put our own family behind some of the students, and we'd be like calling people, can you pick them up? Can you do that? Because actually we put the children first, and we are going to give that time because it's important and we care about them. We're very invested in them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think maybe that also slightly comes from the fact that, I don't know how to put that correctly, but we know that our own children are all right.
Yeah.
So you can sort of put that to one side and just go, no, I need to do this for this child now. And that can make work-life balance a really, really big issue.
I've never thought about it that way. But yeah, we're the kind of the people that are fighting for those children to make sure that they're safe and they're okay and looked after. And actually, but we know that there are people that can look after our own children and that they're safe if we need to call somebody to help, so we can stay later and make sure that other child is safe. And I think there's no teacher that's not going to do that for a child that needs us. And I think that's the thing, that we're constantly, whether it be that you're a Senko, that those extra hours that you have to do to make sure those children are safe, those extra meetings that you have to schedule with all the different agencies that you're going to have to attend at those times, then puts pressure on other areas that you have to shuffle everything around. So I think teaching is quite difficult to organise in that respect as well. There's constant change. There's things that are always added on, extra events in school, extra things you need to do with your tutor groups. And it's those extra little bits that kind of can throw you off balance, and then I need to do that instead of my markings, and then I'm going to do my marking after school, and it's that kind of ricochet of constant kind of build up of things that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well there's as teachers, everyone in education is doing more and more caring around the children, because other agencies are so stretched as well. So I think that's added more and more to teachers' workload. Again, that's that out of the classroom thing. And then just the type of people that tend to go into teaching, you can't just ignore that, can you?
And I think it is that thing that obviously there's a lot more mental health issues going on in schools that are stretched, and obviously mental health agencies are very, very stretched. So it's kind of bringing more in for us to do as teachers, to be that interim and try and keep them in a safe place in the time being until that. But it's putting a lot of extra pressure on teachers, and then that mental load you're taking home as well. So it's how do you distress from that? How do you detach yourself? I don't think it's possible to, in our job, to like not think about them, because we were talking, weren't we, about, I said sleep is a really important thing. I think as teachers we probably don't sleep necessarily as well. I personally, especially at this point of the year where I've got my year 11s doing their GCSEs, and I actually have a book by my bed and I write little notes in it because I will dream about them. And I tell the children, they think it's hilarious. I'm like, I dream about your projects. I dream about your coursework. I dream about your final pieces. Like, and I think they're just constantly on my mind. I was like, I have to write them down, otherwise I'll forget it. And it's like, it's a really good idea. And they just think it's hilarious that I'm not sleeping and I'm going into school. I'm like, I dreamed about you today, and it's
not dodgy at all.
Not dodgy at all. But in of their work and their like ways to help them and things that we can put in place to support them. But it is like, if I didn't like, I genuinely fill a whole book at this point of year, like, and I took it in and actually showed my year 11s one year, because I was like, look, these, every time I wake up I write a little thought about you guys. This is like kind of that I'm just, obviously it's really important when, to me, because I don't want to forget that idea. Otherwise I literally go into the classroom, it's like, oh, I came up with a really good idea, can't remember it for the life of me, and it's going to then frustrate me. Keep me going.
Well, I think sometimes things come to me in the night and I'm then not going to sleep because I'm worried I'm going to forget them.
Yeah.
So then I've got like post-it notes by my bed.
It was a New Year's thing, I recently got into journaling. It was from watching another podcast, and they talked about journaling and kind of having those reflections at the end of the day. And I feel like it shouldn't be. I also read another book where it's like, if you do journal, you need to journal to the point where it doesn't add work. So you shouldn't be journaling to the point where it's a chore and be like, oh, this is just extra work at the end of my day. But if you journal to the point where it's like, okay, this helped me remind me of all the positives that happened today, and also I can kind of be a little reflective of all the things I need to get done later in the week, and it's helped me offload to be able to kind of sleep a bit better and not have to think of them at the moment. And it's having that reflection, okay, did I really achieve the things that I reflected on yesterday? And also, like, where on the scale am I today on terms of 1 to 5 of how good my day was? And actually I'm like, no, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Actually, in hindsight, it can be quite nice.
I didn't know you'd started journaling.
I have.
That's
It's
really
my
cool.
New Year's resolution.
That's very cool.
I stopped when I broke my foot, and every day I was marking myself as a 1 because I was like, broke my foot, got a blood clot. Yeah, no, still in. I think it had the Pacific Journal that I have. I won't mention the name of it. Has different sections, and you have to rate yourself on your finance, your health, your work, and your life balance. So like your family and relationships and stuff. So I think for me, I got to a point where I was like, because obviously I had the blood clot in my leg and then had the blood clot in my lungs, I was marking myself quite low every day.
Really?
So I was like, well, my finances went up because I wasn't driving to work every day.
Oh, that's true.
But
And you couldn't go anywhere.
I couldn't go anywhere. So
Just the hospital vending machine.
just the hospital. My family one went up high because I felt like we were all calling each other and speaking to each other more often, which was nice. So in that respect, I kind of stopped for a little bit till I kind of was actually not writing the same thing every day. Moved from the kitchen to the sofa. It was painful. So I do find that's kind of helped me in seeing the positives in my day and helped me get to sleep better. Although I did say that since going back to work, with how exhausting it's been with the physical condition, I have fallen asleep on the sofa most nights for the last 2 weeks. It's like I'm slept on my sofa more than I have my bed the last week. But I guess that is it's that thing, isn't it? I just need to get to the holidays. I just need to get to Easter. Like, I don't think there's a teacher that doesn't say that. You're just like, oh, if I just get to that point, then I can have a bit of a break.
And I don't think many people who aren't in education understand that. So I think one of the most positive things for me in the last few years is my husband, who's not a teacher, ended up working in the same school as me for a little while. And up to then, he was sort of much, we've been married 20 years, and up to like a couple of years ago, he'd be very much, oh, you're on holiday, just do that. Oh, you finish at 3:00, you can do that. And now he's spent some time in schools, and it's completely different. And he comes and he looks at my face, and he's like, okay, what's happened? Right, okay, now you need to do this. So sometimes he will actually address my work-life balance for me.
That's nice.
But him understanding much more what it's like to be in a school has had a huge dramatic impact on my life. Not saying that you now need to go out. Everyone should go out and make sure they've got a partner who's in education or get their partner.
But a lot of people do. A lot of people do date other teachers or people.
Well, yeah, of course. I think that's your work. That's your workplace, isn't it?
But I think it's
your partner.
It's a different line of work. I think unless you're in it, you don't understand it.
Absolutely. And so many people, because obviously, like in my role as Sankei, and then like if we're employing TAs and things like that, and I've had those conversations with, obviously TAs are worth their weight in gold. They're the most amazing people ever, as far as I'm concerned. But quite a lot of them will come in and say, I never realised it was like this in schools.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I quite often see people looking for jobs that will work around childcare, and they're like, oh, a TA will do that. And it's like, until you go in and actually see the school system, they're like, oh, I didn't realise it was like that. I didn't realise how much hard work it is, even in the younger years. There's a lot that goes in the school, and there's a lot that goes in outside of the classroom. It's not just doing the lesson. But even if you break that down, if you think about a normal job, if you're going to do a presentation for work, you would spend quite a few hours, if not a whole week, working on a presentation, practicing the presentation, tweaking the presentation, make sure you've got the evidence and it looks good and all that, and then you would present it. And that's a lot of pressure, and most people would probably agree with that. Now, if you go, okay, you've got to do that 4 or 5 times in a day, and then kind of review it and then write a new one that is acting on that and improving it, and you're doing that day in, day out, I think it is a lot of pressure if you put it like that and think about how much you're working and how much you're performing. It's very intense teaching, And I think that's why you need the holidays, because you need to recoup and refresh and think about it in that respect.
Or catch up with everything you haven't done in term time.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that we were saying, that I do agree that you should carve out amount of time to have for yourself and to not work. I don't think you should work all holidays, I think, but I do think that it's okay to work 1 or 2 and get yourself ahead to make your life easier when you go back, because that's what I tend to do. I tend to have a day or 2 and then be like, right, I'm going to get this, this and this done, then everything is done, and
so
then
you're not worried
I'm not
about
worried
it for the rest of the holiday.
And same as I don't know whether I'm the only person that would think this, but I kind of don't like the insets in September, because you have a couple of days in the start and then you don't have time to kind of implement all the things that you're introduced to, and then you're straight back in. I'd rather have the inset days in the end of the summer term, so I know what I need to do and can chill out, think about it in my own time when I'm a bit more relaxed, a bit more chilled, and perhaps create some resources and stuff when I've got ample amount of time, rather than rushing it and trying to introduce it straight back. But I know a lot of people would have checked out and be like, no, I'm done, it's the holidays, I'm not interested. So I think it just depends on the teacher. I think there's a lot to be said for kind of both, if that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe there's a happy medium somewhere as well.
And I think preparation is key, and perhaps that's why so many of the younger teachers, with the 81% saying under 20 teachers in their 20s find work-life balance stressful, is that obviously they do have to write their lesson plans and stuff when they are training, but they do get an extra couple of periods when they're in the early careers teachers, and they do get a lot more support and lots of things that they can attend. But perhaps it's that adjusting to the fact they didn't realise the work-life balance. And I think, I know when I've had trainees, I'm very much like, this is how you balance it. And I actually make sure that's in my training. That's something that I have when I talk to a trainee teacher, that you need to make sure that you're doing it this way or this way. And when I've had a trainee go, I need to do some marking, I'm like, right, okay, so why are you marking? What are you marking? And they're like, oh, well, I just need to mark something to tick off this box and have evidence. I'm like, no, like, it has to benefit the kids. We're not going to mark just to tick a box. And if you're going to mark, we're all going to mark, because it needs to be fair on all the children. So it can't be too tedious, because you don't want to add to everyone's workload. So it needs to be an efficient way to mark, and it needs to be something that's going to benefit the students, so that it's not for any reason. I think that was kind of a light bulb moment for them, that like, I'm not marking for the sake of it to tick a box. I'm marking because it's benefiting the kids, and then it doesn't matter how you mark as long as it's going to benefit them. And I think that's definitely reduced my workload with bringing in kind of whole class marking, or you were saying live marking.
I find live marking really effective,
and I think getting that done in the classroom is really useful. For me, with photography, we moved to digital mark books, and therefore I've now got a digital comment bank. So rather than writing it onto all of them, I'm copying and pasting, but I literally have 5-6 pages of comments that I can copy and paste from. So there's a real range of them. And same as I've recently invested in a printer that I can talk into my phone, it prints out the stickers for what I've said, and I can stick it in their books now. That's really cool. Quicker than me handwriting it, because I'm ironically, because since we've gone digitally, I can handwrite really slow. And actually my students found it a bit of a laugh. They were like, right, you handwrite it and we'll type it on the phone. And then we did typing versus me speaking into the phone, and we actually timed them all and saw which was the quickest. But it has sped up that kind of thing of kind of feedback and making it quicker. And I think having an efficient way to reduce that, same as I've done mark sheets that have all the common misconceptions on. I have one for drawing, one for writing, one for experimentation, and I staple them into the books and I highlight them, and they do the ones that I highlight. Obviously I write still do their spelling and what have you and things down the side, but for me that means I can mark a whole class in 15-20 minutes, and it's really easy to do and quick to do. And then they're all in theory got individual feedback, because there's kind of, I think I've got 20 boxes to pick from, and they all get 2 boxes highlighted that they then improve on. So for me it's quick, it's effective, they can work on it, but it means that I could, especially as an art subject, and you'd have the same when you used to teach music.
I do still teach music sometimes,
but like the lower school, when it's like one lesson a week and you end up teaching the whole of a key stage. So I teach every year 9 class in the whole of my school. So trying to mark all of year 9 at the same time, or gather data for the whole of year 9 to write the whole of year 9's reports, is a huge amount versus like an English teacher that just has one class and it's actually only 30 kids. And that's, so it's kind of thinking about those in terms of your subject. How do you make marking work for you and what you're trying to do so you can gain back that time, but it still be effective, I think is the key.
Yeah, for me, I find like live marking really useful, sort of going around talking to a child, like writing in as I'm talking to them, and then they start responding in their books.
And I think also looking at that, picking kids, so picking a high ability, a middle ability, a low ability, your SEN students, and marking them and seeing what they're doing can work quite well, because then you can kind of add it on from there. So you're kind of getting a generic look at your class whilst picking specific students rather than having to mark all of them. And I think some bigger departments do that across like a whole subject. So I know our maths will kind of do that. They'll look at that across all their classes and then compare them to see whether there's any gaps in the curriculum. And I think that's the thing. I'm always adapting my curriculum to try and make it easier and better to do the next year. And it is easier. Like every lesson is planned out for the whole entire year. I'll still adapt them and change them. But for me, not having that workload does mean, but I've earned that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, I guess, when you get into the older age group, saying that they're less stressed by work-life balance is because I guess you put that time and effort in earlier on to create something.
I sort of agree, but at the same time, like, for example, for me, because I've taught music BTEC for years and years since it came out, and it stopped. So I've now had to do that whole thing. I've had years and years of resource and done all the training and done all the standardization for years and years and felt really, really comfortable with it, getting good results. But obviously now that the BTEC is currently in its final year, so I've switched to a new course that we're trying to learn, and almost as the children are going, and you think but then I get that guilt. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be able to support you the same way I've supported others because I'm still trying to get my head around it.
And I think we're quite proud people as teachers, and that sometimes it can be quite hard to ask other people for advice or ask other teachers for their resources. Because as national subject lead, I quite often send out resources to other schools to use. So that's why I try and write mine so that any cover teacher, anybody can, because early in my school, I had lots of issues with cover. So therefore I wrote it so anybody could teach my lessons, because I did have cover teaching my lessons when somebody went off long-term sick. So I think not being afraid to ask or look for other things. Obviously there's like places like Oaks which you can look at for resources and stuff, and that's great that there is that resource. But I don't know whether as teachers we need that place to go that is supported. If people like Ofsted are going to come in and criticise and say all these things about different departments, should they actually have a responsibility to have curriculum examples that people can use and take and do? Like, rather than just inspecting schools, shouldn't they be more supporting schools and actually go, if you're struggling, use this would help, and actually having somewhere. It seems very scattered kind of across. Every school is different, every school teaches different. Like, actually, do we need to work more together as a collective of teachers to help each other out in workload, rather than being like, I'm going to put mine on tests and sell it for some money? Not that that's not a bad place to start, especially like the free resources there are great, but it's that kind of, if you are struggling, don't feel like you have to do it all yourself. There are places to go.
And but if you're older, maybe you've got more of those links. You know, because you've moved schools a few times, and you know you've got people in other schools that you can like contact and ask for that support.
And I think it is that in the younger teachers, don't be afraid to ask for other people. Find a network, find a Facebook group that you can, or a social media group that you can ask for advice and ask for help. Because I don't know whether it's just an art teacher thing, but I'm with a couple, and literally somebody will be like, I need to learn how to do this, how do I do it? And people will be like, here's a PowerPoint, here's a PowerPoint, here's a PowerPoint. And everyone's quite open to sharing stuff. And even it will be like, somebody shared a couple of years ago some great slides on careers, and be like, oh, that was me, here you go. And it's kind of it's nice to see that, but I don't know whether necessarily the younger years really know how to access that to help themselves,
Maybe.
or whether it's, or do we still have that actually sharing is caring and actually we can help it, or is that lazy teaching? Do you feel that you need to be able to create something yourself,
maybe,
to understand it, or at least to be able to adapt it?
I think another thing I think that changed as I've gone through is having my own children.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit that almost forces you to have more of a work-life balance, because you've got to, you've got to feed them, unfortunately, and you've got to bath them,
got to keep them alive.
Got to keep them alive and make sure they get into bed and and all those things. And in a way, that forces, it certainly forces me to have a break every evening. I mean, I might not, but when I say break, I am sort of inverted commas here. But and it also does mean that sometimes I might have an awful situation at school, and I walk into the house and I've got to deal with the fact that my daughter fell over and has a slight scrape on her knees and wishes the end of the world for them, and that takes things,
Yeah, it changes your perspective, and you have to let it go and leave it at the door, which helps. But I know certainly for me, having little man and having that time where I have to be present, I have to put him to bed, but sometimes he also understands, like, mummy's on a course, mummy's going to be on her laptop, like, you're going to have to just be aware of that. And I think as children, they know that their parents are working, but also knowing that you're going to have that extra time with them in the holidays and be more present in the holidays because you're not at work. But I think, like, for me, I started working out in the evenings for my well-being. I started off just doing half an hour. I'm reading a habits book at the moment, and I said, like, making the thing accessible. So for me, I got a home kind of workout, weights and stuff, and I got an app that I can play on my telly. So having something that's accessible, that means that you're more likely to do it, because it's rather than, if, for example, if you were going to join a gym, make sure it's a gym on the journey to or from work, so you're not having to go out of your way and add to your time. So if that is easy to access, you're more likely to do it. And then the more you do it, the more you see the benefit. So I also leave the equipment out. So I'm like, okay, if it's there, I'm more likely to do it.
Oh, is that your excuse why it's all over the place?
That's why I don't tidy it away. Yeah.
Okay, right,
yeah.
I'll let Mum know that next time she complains about your house.
Or leave your gym stuff out on the floor the night before, so when you get up, you put it on. No, my trainers are in the shoebox. So you're more likely to put them on and do the workout if they're there. It's there as a prompt to do. So I used to do evenings, and then my friend did every morning, and we used to try and, again, community. You're a substance of the people that you hang out with. So I'm hanging out with you, deep. So you're going to rub off on me this week. So therefore, I'm more likely to do the things that the people around me are doing. So we used to all have the same app. We used to all post what number we did, and we all had to try and do the same one that other people did. So that motivated me, and we're all teachers. And actually, we've said, my friend who does it, who's also a teacher, we both said that when we've stopped doing it, it's affected our mental health, not having that outlet. And I think for me, it's like that half an hour and I'm done and I'm out, and I've, like, my mental load is clear, like the de-stress is gone. But she used to do it in the morning. I was like, I'm going to try it. I hated it. I hated getting up at 6 a.m. and doing a half an hour workout. And it probably took me a good month before actually I'm like, I really enjoy this. So, and it was that kind of working out, having a shower, going to work, and having that clear mind that I've already done that. I'm now awake. I'm more energized at the start of my day than I was. And that was just time that I would have sat on my phone and scrolled in bed previously. But it's kind of twisted, and therefore I felt like I'd achieved more, and I didn't feel so guilty when I sat on the sofa in the evenings. But I mean, you have started a new thing for your well-being that you dragged me into this afternoon.
Well, I've sort of gone back to it. So I'm really lucky, as Hannah said. I'm in Cornwall. I'm really, really close to the sea. And I have maybe been watching a series on Disney that I've started watching for one reason, has actually found very useful for another reason.
You mean Thor?
Yeah. Anyway, it reminds, because I do Hannah and I have always done loads of swimming. We've been sort of brought up that way, both swam quite competitively. And then here, for years, I was doing quite a lot of open water swimming, and then Thor reminded me that actually cold water swimming in an immersion is really, really good for you.
Well, he was looking. It's the show's about kind of him finding ways to live longer.
Yeah, and to deal with stress and things like that. And so, I was like, I actually really love swimming, and I haven't had time really to get into the water much this year. So I then challenged my son, who plays rugby to quite a good level and was quite achy as well. One day I said, right, come on, let's go and do some cold water immersion and let's go in the sea. So about a month ago, him and I decided we were going to start a weekly plunge. So we've been doing that and just gradually getting ourselves back used to the cold water. And it just feels amazing. It's horrible. To get in there is horrible. And you get the whole gasp reflex and, but actually get out of it and it just feels so alive and yeah, it feels good. And some of the aches and pains go as well.
That's the thing. I joined them this afternoon. I wasn't quite 100% convinced.
You did it.
I did it. My son was like quite game, which I was quite impressed with. Got changed, went up to his knees, went nah, and got out.
Yeah,
but it was cold enough.
Nothing on him, has he?
Bless him. Tiny. He did say it was cold enough to claim the hot chocolate with marshmallows, though, which was fair. But we all went in. We got you fully went for a swim. My foot's not quite healed enough. That's my excuse. But I did do a little bit of a swim, but I wouldn't get out of my depth because I didn't want to die. But Fred,
I think my 17-year-old just does it so that he can take his shirt off in case there's any girls.
He went in and got out very quick, and then was like, "Grandma, did you get a good James Bond picture?"
Yes, she did.
different reasons, but I think even though they were all different ages and all different reasons, it was really fun to do as a group. It was really fun to kind of challenge yourself mentally to get over that block and prove that you can do something that you didn't necessarily, when you first get in, you're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Oh, it's so cold.
And then you get like up to your waist and you're like, I'm definitely not going to be able to get any further. And then a bigger wave comes and you're like, oh, I might as well get in now. And then actually when you're in, it's not so bad. And I think it's that proving to yourself, isn't it, that they're meant to do, and it's controlling your body and your breathing and kind of restarting it. And I completely get how people would do that as a positive thing regularly. I've got a friend who filled up a big kind of canister with a lid outside his house, who's a teacher, and every morning he posted a video of him getting in it, and he timed himself for 3 minutes.
Ice.
Well, at points there was ice that he would lift off the top, because I want to say it was February that he did it. Wow. And it was cold. The videos were, it was all still really dark, and like I was like, oh, fair play that you're like literally doing that at 6:30 in the morning before work and going.
So it's like a big upright then?
Big upright plastic kind of like a water but yeah, so it had the lid on, just took it off, you just filled it up.
He must be quite tall.
Yeah,
because I think I would kill myself trying to get in
you wouldn't be able to get out. Had a little step to get in and out. you would struggle. You just need,
I'm average,
like a half of one. But he said, and then he continued it. I don't know whether he still does it. Actually, it was Josh. So if you haven't gone and listened to our podcast talking about sport in school, then do go back and find that and listen to it on the playback. But yeah, he actually continued it on. He said he just found the benefits of it outweighed anything, and actually everyone was seeing him do it, and a lot of his friends would come and join in at weekends and stuff. Cool. And it's quite a nice thing. And I guess the more you do it, the more you get over the headspace of getting in it.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of people that I follow online that do it, and they very much say, like, one of them goes, people always want to know the benefits of something before doing it. So people want to know the benefits of cold water swimming or cold water dip. He used to do it in the sea, but then he got an ice bath and one that you can change it, the levels. And he was like, people always want to know what the benefits of it are before doing it, but you can't really explain the benefits until you do it, and then you understand it.
Yeah.
And the other guy was quite similar. He's like, it's, if you do it at the start of the day, that is the hardest part of your day, getting over the mental hurdle to get into that cold water. And then you feel so alive and your body just feels in a really good place that anything is achieved, everything else in the rest of your day is easier.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that mental challenge and clearing your mental load, and I guess making yourself feel like everything is achievable. I think that's the thing with teaching. You do need to balance it, because sometimes it just feels like it's constant, and it's just, there's never that kind of relief. It's just one thing after another, after another. Like, you can never get to the end of your to-do list, but actually kind of having that mentality that actually you feel like you can achieve something, you can break through barriers, can put yourself into a good place.
I think it also makes you a better teacher for all those children that are relying on you as well, because if you burn out and you know you're not doing those things for yourself, you are not doing justice to yourself as a teacher and to those children that rely on. I mean, let's be honest, the children rely on us, don't they?
Yeah, and I certainly feel that, having been off for a few weeks with my injuries, like, and the response I got going back, like, I emailed the students and said I was like kind of phasing myself back, because I was literally in quite a lot of pain at the end of a day, even with a reduced timetable. And I emailed the students going, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be able to do the after schools for a few weeks, because I'm in quite a lot of pain, and I'll put them on. I need to have a couple of weeks and then I'll put them back on. And one of the students just replied to me going, Miss, you're far more important. Please rest. Like, just we're absolutely fine if you don't do the after schools. Like, just look after yourself. We're glad to have you back. And it's like that. I think I put so much pressure on myself that, like, I want to do that for them. Their exams are coming up. I don't want to let them down at this like point. And especially having been off for so long, I feel like there's that pressure, and it's that opposite pressure, isn't it? Like, we say to the students that if they miss 15 days of school a year, that's the equivalent of a GCSE. I was like, well, I've missed 15 lessons, so that's essentially equivalent of a GCSE for them. Like, I need to put in that extra time, put in that extra effort, and catch them up. And it's a lot of load to take. Like, you feel very responsible for your students and you don't want to let them down. But I do that religiously, but I do it quite my Monday nights. So I'm like, I'm going to be there anyway. They're quite relaxed. If the kids want help, I'll help. If they just want to use resources, they can use resources. If I've got work to do, I will sit there and work in it, and they completely understand that sometimes they can be there, but I'm going to do work as well. And I think that's quite a nice way to do the after schools, as opposed to it being something that you feel pressured to be there, that's an extra lesson that you have to prepare for and that you've been pressurized into doing. It needs to be something that you enjoy and build your relationships. That's the place that I have the lovely chats. That's the place that I push my boundaries and their boundaries, and I'm like, do you want to try this for a photo shoot? Like, we had big rolls of paper out, and we're doing full kind of powder paint shoots after school, which I would never be able to do in a classroom full of 30 kids, but when I've got kind of 6 or 7 after school, we can move all the tables around and have that, or mess around with lights and stuff. So for me, those sessions are important for me, pushing my boundaries, pushing the kids' boundaries, and having good relationships with them. But I don't think it should be something that SLT pressurise you to do.
No, but does it also help because it sort of reminds you of your love of your subject?
Yeah, and it takes that pressure off almost, because I'm like, I've got that after school where I can be there for those high ability students that want to push themselves. I can use that time to get my own time. That's the time that I've dedicated, that I'm going to get stuff done or help them or do those bits. And also it's that kind of safe space. I like the fact that kids will come and they'll open up, and that's the place where they feel safe. And I think a lot of students like that place to go sometimes after school. So although it's important for our well-being, it's times those sessions can be important for them as well.
Yeah, I think when you do extracurricular and children see you putting in that time that's not just in the classroom, it does so much, for their relationship with you. And then when you are back in the classroom with them, it's quite often easier to teach them.
See, my well-being was quite massively affected when my school changed the lunchtime system. So in COVID, we moved our tutor group to the middle of the day instead of the end of the day, and we had split lunches, and we've kept that. So we've got earlier in lunch, we've got 7, 8 to 9 go for lunch first, and then 10 to 11s go for lunch second, and the other, whichever one isn't on lunch, has tutor time. Now for me, I'm a Key Stage 3 tutor. I'm a head of department, and everyone in my department has Key Stage 3 tutor groups, and none of us are available to do Key Stage 4 lunchtime detentions. So I'm not building that relationship with those difficult children that aren't getting the work done in lessons. They're going to heads of year. But also, our lunchtime has been cut shorter. So we've got kind of a 35-minute lunch with there's like a 5-minute swap over. So it's really kind of 30 minutes. Whereas before we used to have a 45-minute lunch. Now I would spend 30 minutes doing stuff with students and then 15 minutes eating my lunch. Granted, that's probably not the healthiest way, but actually I much preferred lunch that way, because it meant I was able to run places like my after school where kids would come, kids would enjoy my subject, kids would just come to hang out or would do stuff. And in terms of we survey our students a lot with asking them what they want, activities they want more of. It was constantly comes back with Key Stage 3 art. They want Key Stage 3 art clubs, but I only have one tutor group a week where I don't have a tutor group, and I do the intervention with the kids that won't come to after school. So I either have to give up another of my evenings, which I just don't have the capacity for, or I have to kind of forgo the Key Stage 4. But for me, they're more important. So it's really difficult. I'd love to do that lunchtime or an after school and give that to Key Stage 3 and encourage them and create that love and almost create that space for their well-being. But I can't do it for my own well-being. Like, I feel really guilty for it, but there's just not the space in my timetable to be able to do it. And I think that's the thing, especially with creative subjects. There's a lot of pressure on the lunchtime activities, the after-school activities, the school plays, the concerts. In that respect, there's quite a lot of pressure for teachers to do more outside of lessons.
Yeah, which goes back to your facts that you found earlier, wasn't it? Which one was it? That most of them, what they're doing after half their time is on tasks other than teaching.
Yeah, over half of their time is spent not teaching, doing other things. And I think that's something that SLT needs to be mindful of, creative subjects, that actually we teach more groups and then we do more extracurricular stuff. So it's kind of worth considering that when you're asking them to do more things. Because I love a competition. I love kind of doing nice things. We had a one a few years ago where the kids wrote and designed postcards that we sent to care homes. Like, I love all that stuff, all the extra stuff that makes teaching so special. But it takes time. Like, I'm taking my kids surfing in June. I've got 3 sessions after school. Now that's going to be 9-10 hours of my time.
Hannah, what happened last time you took children surfing?
That wasn't the time I took the children surfing. So that I do because I love it, and I love watching the kids surf, and I love watching them enjoy it, and it's on the coast. I did plan a staff surfing wellbeing session and broke my foot on the first wave, and it did nothing for my wellbeing. But the rest of the staff loved it. It was great. And we quite often, I think that's the thing, we live near water as well. We have the river near where I live as well, and quite often on a Friday we'll have paddle and a pint, and a lot of us have paddle boards or kayaks, and we're lucky that 10 minutes down the road we can get straight onto the river. And we have done in the summer, we've gone out for like a little paddle, and then there's a pub that you leave from and come back from, and then you have to have a drink in order to have launched from there.
Oh dear.
I know, it's tragic. So obviously it doesn't have to be alcoholic, it can be anything, but that's quite nice on a Friday after school, that kind of in terms of school well-being, but it's more of a kind of a teacher planned thing as opposed to anything that SLT are doing. But I do think it depends what your staff want, but sometimes having something that's going to make you not think about teaching and just enjoy the day can be really nice.
I think it's important to have some things like you say, as school well-being things, but it's also important for teachers to have their own things as well.
The little things that I've seen that school does well, I've seen a school do a lunchbox. So they have, like, in the staff room, they have a little box and it's filled of like pot noodly type things for the days where a teacher's come into school and forgotten their lunch, or had to leave in a rush, or not had time to cook their lunch or make a lunch, or something's gone on. That's quite nice that there's like that option. Okay, there is a backup. Like, it's not the end of the world. Yeah. I think sometimes we're all so busy to get out the door that sometimes we don't look after ourselves.
That's one thing I do. Well, I am a senior leader, and I'm on duty every day, but quite a lot of my duties are in the canteen. But I that's just don't bring food into work anymore, because literally that I will do that as part of my day. And I quite like, we have 2 lunches. Um, so if I'm usually on duty, one lunch, and the second lunch I will go up to the canteen and I will get a meal and I will sit with the children and I will eat it and have conversations, and but also support whichever staff are on duty in the canteen at the same time. So I'm lending a hand and eating and sort of chatting to kids.
I've seen a previous school do that actually they offer staff free lunches
Yeah.
if they go and eat in the canteen, and actually that's helped improve behaviour because you have more teachers there during that lunchtime, so therefore the students behave. And I do think it's nice when there is that culture that teachers sit with students. I had that at my old school, that actually, I mean, obviously I was there in early days, so it was quite normal for the kids to come and sit on the same tables as us and eat and chat with them, and that's quite a nice environment.
There's a big link with literacy around about that whole oracy thing, and I know there's some work about, staff actually sitting with children and in the canteen and chatting with them, because that's a big thing that they feel is missing in some home lives, that has a big effect on literacy.
Yeah, that there's, isn't it? I suppose it's the cultural capital gap, isn't it? That they're not having those educational conversations about everyday life in their normal home life. They're actually having that, being able to have that conversation, and especially as well in terms of ability. Like, I know that I've got SEN students in my tutor group that will always come and hang around after tutor time to talk to me, or come find me at lunch to talk to me, and I think they just long for that conversation with people.
Yeah, we also we've set up a nurture unit, which I think most secondary schools in particular, but probably most primary schools, have had to do as well, in the face of the huge numbers of SEN we have. So we've created like our own little nurture space, and we've got a big central table, and if children want to come in to eat because it's a bit quieter in there, that's absolutely fine, but they sit down at the table with everyone and we're having those conversations.
And I think that's a thing with wellbeing, is also where staff eat. I think some schools have multiple staff rooms, or some schools just eat within their department. I know that when we surveyed our schools, and some, they asked the staff about whether they felt they could speak to other members of staff. Some people said no, but for me, I'm quite a social. I'm a social butterfly in terms of staff rooms. So I eat within my department, but then there's certain days where I'm quite a busy one, so I don't want to go as far, so I'll eat in the staff room near my room, which has everyone else in. And then previously, before she left, my best friend was in the other end, but she had a different tutor group. So on the day that I had my intervention, that was the day I went and ate down there. So I ate down with different teachers. So it was quite nice eating with different teachers around the school, but also hearing because I feel that's the place that people vent, and hearing different issues that people were having. But I found it quite interesting that some people said that they couldn't talk to other staff, but I think that's because they stick to where they eat.
Yeah.
I think the more, and that's what I would say definitely to an early careers teacher or somebody starting in a new school, is make sure you go and eat in all the different staff rooms. Don't stick to one staff room, because actually having that wider net is really nice. And I know my school moved to join a trust, and I've got a disabled son, so he had a lot of hospital appointments at the start, and I didn't want to lie. I told them about all of the appointments and said that they were them. But I'd reached the threshold of the number of days that I could have for hospital appointments quite early on. And my line manager didn't want to give me the document. She was like, I read it, because I was doing a lot of extra hours due to having staff off sick. So I was kind of doing far more hours than I would do normally. But that didn't really count, because I was like, but the policy is we now can't pay you if you take any more days for the hospital. And I was quite upset about it. And obviously my line manager kind of knew that I would be, but I went and spoke in the staff room about it. And 3 members of staff, I went to a different staff room that I didn't really go to that often, just the once a week. And they went, well, tell us when the appointments are. Between us, we'll work out who's free and we'll all cover your lessons so you don't lose pay. And for me, that was like a real moment of like, gosh, I haven't been at this school very long. I don't really know these staff, because these are in a different staff room, but I feel supported. Like, I feel that's the kind of school that you want to be at, where staff are like we've got your back. We'll support you when you need to do things, because that's what we do. We work as a team. And I do that. If somebody's struggling, I'll be like, hand me over that. What do you want me to do? If I can staple in some sheets for you to make your marking quicker, I will do it. If you need me to send some emails, do you want me to go find those kids and round them up? Do you want me to take that assembly? Like, I'm quite often that person that I want to try and make other people's lives easier. If somebody's helped me, like the cover teachers with being off, I will come in and leave them like cupcakes on their desks to say thank you. Because I feel like it's important. It's very easy to get to vent and be like, this is horrible, this is really stressful, nobody cares, like this, like work is horrible. But actually,
Random acts of
kindness are really important, and sometimes they can. I did I did a thing one year, because I was very much in the wellbeing group. We did a mugging off, where we had a whole load of mugs, and the idea was you had to fill the mug with different stuff and leave it on somebody's desk, and we're like, you've been mugged, and then you got to take all the stuff out and you got to fill it with different things and then put it on somebody else's
I like
desk.
that. That's nice.
So it kind of like was a bit of a surprise as to whether it ended up on your desk. Or we did have a random acts of kindness, a bit like a Secret Santa, where you picked a name out and then you had to do things for that person.
For that week. Yeah, we've done that,
and that was quite nice. I had somebody randomly bring me a hot chocolate on that week. I had a group of kids come and sing to me because they got the kids involved in the tutor group, and they came and
That's nice.
randomly sang to me. And I think that was quite nice as well. You get the kids involved, then it helps. And I think that's the thing, is we're not very good at reducing workload, but if we feel appreciated, we don't mind as much. And I think I had a school once where they did thank you cards, and at the end of each term, the kids had to write one thank you card to a teacher or somebody in the school and say what they were thankful for. And I think that was good for the kids to think about what teachers do and build a bit of appreciation. Also, it was great to get them. I still have mine. I have them all in like a little folder, and they just make me feel like what I do is worth it, and that you are making a difference. And I remember that happened to be the same year I was teaching philosophy for the year, which is not
philosophy.
I taught philosophy. It wasn't my area of expertise, and there was this one kid in that class that seemed to just get it. And every time a kid asked a question, I did not. Every time I asked a question, that kid was like, "Is it this, miss?" I'm like, "Yes, it is." And I honestly wouldn't have been able to teach that class without him. And he was so good. But he wrote me a thank you card at the end of the year to say thank you for teaching me philosophy. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really loved it. And I was like, no, honestly, thank you. I could not have taught that class without you, because literally you were absorbing everything I said and helping me get through it. So like it's little things like that. But yeah, it's a thankless job, but it's nice when you are thanked.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to just play our news, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the next thing, which is that most people said that they can't communicate about their well-being to senior leadership. So if you want to drop in any thoughts on that, please do so.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
In union news, Daniel Kebede has been elected leader of the National Education Union. The union is the largest teachers' union and has been at the forefront of industrial action over teachers' pay in recent months. Mr. Kebede said in a statement, after taking 69% of the vote to win the election, "I am honoured to have been elected as General Secretary. I would like to thank everyone who has supported and campaigned for me." He went on to talk about the need for fundamental change in education, and that this included an end to real terms pay cuts, an end to massive overwork of staff, the end of punitive Ofsteds, and an increase in school funding. He also thanked current Joint General Secretaries Kevin Courtney and Dr Mary Bousted for their inspiring leadership over the last 6 years. They will step down at the end of August. The BBC reports that, according to a leaked government document, almost a quarter of teachers in England are working 12-hour days, with around 60% of teachers saying they were doing 60 hours a week or more. The research by the Department for Education was carried out during spring 2022, but the findings have not been officially made public. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan has said that a new task force will be created to help reduce teachers' workload by an average of 5 hours per week. The leak comes as teaching unions consult members in England on a new pay offer, which includes the promise to reduce workload. The leaked document, marked confidential and given the title Working Lives of Teachers and Leaders, was produced by the DfE to examine issues around teacher supply, recruitment and retention. More than 11,000 teachers and leaders across primary and secondary were questioned. The report found 1 in 4 teachers were considering leaving the state sector within the next 12 months. Workload was the key factor in this decision. 3/4 said they spent too much time on paperwork. 2/3 of leaders said they spent too much time responding to government policy changes. 1 in 5 said they had low satisfaction in their working life, whilst almost a half rated their anxiety levels as high. Almost 3/4 of teachers described their workload as unacceptable. Dr Mary Bousted of the NEU accused ministers of withholding important information from the peer review body, although the government denied this. A spokesperson for the government insisted that the recent pay offer of 4.3% plus a £1,000 one-off payment was fair and reasonable. The Department for Education has released an update on the .gov.uk website focusing on the review of the way relationship, sex and health education is delivered. The update comes after a number of stories across media outlets prompted concern and outrage from some quarters and claims that hysteria is being whipped up by right-wing agitators from others. RSHE education has been compulsory for pupils in primary schools since September 2020. In secondary schools, relationships and sex education must be taught. The review, which will be completed by an expert panel, will focus on how to ensure pupils have access to age-appropriate information and how to place protection from pupils being introduced to things that they are too young to understand properly. The panel will also consider how age ratings can be introduced for different parts of the curriculum. The review will be completed before the end of 2023. As we approach Easter, the debate about supporting families who receive support through free school meals should be supported in holiday times, and it's opened up again. The big issue raises concerns that despite the cost of living crisis, many families will go without support until term begins again. In what it calls a postcode lottery for support, many families will miss out as current funding largely depends on where you live. In England, the government is not directly funding free school meals over the Easter break, but support may be available if local councils decide to provide meals or vouchers. Many councils are relying on the Holiday Activities and Food Programme to support low-income families. In Scotland, some councils are offering free school meals payments to low-income families, but universal free school meals for children in primary 1 to 5 will not be available. There is some support available, but it varies by council, as does the amount of support being offered. The Welsh Government has made free meals available throughout the holiday period. The government in Wales announced that £9 million has been provided to support eligible pupils with a free meal up to the end of May half-term, including all bank holidays. The support will take the form of meal vouchers, money or packed lunches. In Northern Ireland, no free school meal provision is available. The previous holiday hunger payments of £27 per fortnight ceased on April the 1st. A Department for Education spokesperson said it was because additional ring-fenced funding had ended, but campaigners focusing on food poverty said the decision was abhorrent. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides, and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
So, I was having a little look on Teacher Tap earlier about in terms of well-being and mental health and kind of workload, and I found it really interesting that over 1 in 3 teachers don't feel able to speak about their mental well-being in school, particularly younger teachers being more reserved. 42% of teachers in their 20s do not feel able to speak about their well-being, and same as 1 in 3 classroom teachers reported that their leaders don't care about staff well-being, yet 99% of heads asked said that they do. Is it difference due to the perception of staff when faced with the reality of their day-to-day? So do you think, like, kind of as a senior leader, do you think that perhaps people don't necessarily communicate to you their well-being?
I think there's some of that. I think it's, you cannot be a good senior leader in school if you are not putting that staff well-being there, because if you're, staff well-being's got to be one of the most important things, because if your staff aren't able to be in school because their well-being isn't there, then you're absolutely shot in the foot. It's a really, really important part of being a senior leader. But we recently had some associate positions came up, so to allow some middle leaders who are aspiring to senior leadership to sort of spend some time on senior leadership. And one of the things one of my close colleagues said to me, I really did not understand how much you guys do at a senior leadership level. That really, and she was like, we don't understand, we don't see it. And if staff knew what you do, that I think it would help. And she was sort of alluding to staff wellbeing, that they just knew that you are dealing with it. And that comment really stuck with us. So one thing we're trying to improve as a senior leadership team is to get more information about what we're doing in response to their concerns out there. Because I think, sometimes if you've had a really horrible lesson, especially at secondary level, with a behavioural issue, quite often we take that away as a senior leadership and we'll deal with it, and that might not get fed back to that teacher how that was dealt with, so they might feel undermined, really. So we've tried to make a real effort to try and up our communication. I think it's quite often thought of at senior leadership. I just think that sometimes there's so much going on at senior leadership that doesn't necessarily get fed back down.
I think as well, senior leadership has become under a huge amount of pressure. I think since COVID, there was so much that senior leaders had to take on and adapt and learn and make sure all the staff and pupils were safe. And then it was adapting to coming back and changing how it is. And then it's been kind of filling the gaps and trying to get everyone back up to where it should be, as well as dealing with far more staff absences, lack of cover. Like, I feel like the stress on leadership is far more, and obviously just to teachers in general, but it must be, I can't imagine the amount of work that you'd have to do as a leader. But it is that thing, isn't it, that actually if you communicate that to your staff, then it is going to make them feel more appreciated and more understood, and they'll work better for you. So it's kind of a two-way street. I definitely think, like, I bought my head an Easter egg and gave it to him before Easter, because, like, I do appreciate how much senior leadership work, and same as at Christmas, I made sure all of my leadership got homemade chutneys, because that's what I do. Like, little things that don't cost me much, but I can show appreciation, because I think leadership is a thankless job. I think people are very quick to moan to senior leadership, but they're not necessarily as quick to thank senior leadership. But also, they are the key thing. If it's done well, then staff will work well for you. So it's kind of a two-way street that I don't think a lot of schools get right.
No, I completely agree. I think it's, it is really tough like that. And I think there's that difficulty, isn't there, as well, that there's so much going on. Sometimes what can be really important to one teacher we might have dealt with that and then had to pick up the fact that there's no social workers available for one child, and that we've had another disclosure and this has gone wrong, and then we've also got to find a cover teacher. There's so many little things, and
I feel there's so many balls to be juggled
Yes,
than there
lots of
used to be in leadership.
definitely. I suppose obviously I'm more on that pastoral side. And I really appreciate everything that our outside agencies and professionals do to support us. But I think they would admit as well there is a lot more that is there under pressure, and a lot more gets left on the school. So when your thing was saying about, again, that 60 hours in a week and less than half of those hours are spent on teaching, absolutely, probably 10% of my time I would probably give over to teaching at the moment, because we're trying to do and fight so many other things to support children and teachers.
Well, we joked at the news when it said that teachers are on average working 12-hour days. You're like, I'd love a 12-hour day. That'd be nice. And it is, I just think this is why teachers are leaving the profession, is that it's not because they don't want to teach. They love teaching and they want to be there, but it's really hard to balance it. And I think that it's become this norm that we expect teachers to do more, and then that should have been a one-off that they did that more, but then that doing more becomes the normal. And then they add in an extra thing, and that was just going to be just for that term whilst that teacher was off, and then but then that's become the norm to do that much, and then and it seemed to be this vicious thing that teachers just do more and more and more and more and more, and forget to look after themselves, and that it is perfectly acceptable to say no and put yourself first, but it's really, really hard to do so. But it is finding that thing that kind of balances it out. Like you row quite a lot, and I imagine getting out on that water is quite peaceful and calm, but it's quite stressful to kind of get out and find that time. But actually, is it worth it? Is it kind of reward versus kind of making yourself get up early and doing it on a day off?
Definitely. And I think the other thing is, because I row, I gig row, and so there's 6 people and there's 6 rowers and a cox and a boat, and if I don't get there, there is then a rower missing, and that can make it really, really tough on the crew, and it can make it hard for the crew to go out, especially in Cornish tides and waves and things. So there's that. I can't let the team down, because if I don't go, they're all not going to get out. So it makes me have to do it, even if I've had a bad day and I'm really tired and I really don't want to. So I think that having some sort of thing which is sort of a team base and that other people are relying on you makes you and forces you get out. And then, if suddenly see a kingfisher fly by or something like that, it makes it really worth it. Or I've had occasions where like dolphins have popped up next to the boat, which is brilliant.
I have I mean, everyone has them. I have park run, which actually you recommended to me back when I didn't have broken feet and I could run. But my neighbour across the road is a teacher and was into park run. So he used to get up, knock on my door. I would drop my child to their house and his kids would look after mine. And we would go and do the park run on a Saturday morning. And actually that was really nice. It got you up. It was out and early. And then again, you can enjoy the rest of the day having had that moment to de-stress. But we did bump into some students that we taught there. So I always make sure I start after my students so that they don't overtake me and I don't have that embarrassment.
It's a good job it's not a lap thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
around.
Yeah, it was. There were definitely some moments where I was like, they waved at me and I'm like, yeah, I'm going back that way. But it is finding that thing that's going to be important to you, for you to have a release that you've got to find a way to forget about work, and it's really, really difficult. But having that balance and not feeling guilty for doing it and giving your time to it, and not feeling guilty for putting yourself first, because it's very, especially as a parent, it's quite easy to be like, got to look after the kids, make sure they're alive. Then I've got to give everything to my job.
Sure your kids are alive.
I try really hard for that, and then you're last, you're bottom of the list, and it is, and same as like, I do have lovely teaching friends that we kind of try and give each other a call on the drive home on a Friday and check in and see how each other's week's gone, and it's nice having that teacher community and finding other teachers, even at other schools, that you can kind of speak to and know that you're not alone, and know that like kind of it is normal, it's normalizing this, but other people outside of teaching don't understand that this is normal.
Yeah.
We're not off having our jollies for 14 weeks a year. We genuinely are working so hard and so many hours to deserve those times, and they're really important to refresh.
And going back to, if you can find some like communities where there are teachers in your area from other schools, and they've got, if you say, oh my God, I've just had the moderator in and they've said this, and being able to talk to people from other schools, I think is really useful as well.
We have an art network. There's lots around the country. Ours is specifically for the East Anglian art teachers, but every now and then, I think it's like once a month, we have a meetup where you can go and attend. We generally do some kind of arty technique where we actually have time to create something ourselves, but basically it's just a bit of a chat, a bit of a catch up, but actually we've learned a technique as well that we can take back to the classroom, and that's really nice in itself because it's a really relaxed thing. You can attend if you want to, you don't have to attend, there's no cost. But it's just a really nice place to go and meet other people, hear about what other people are doing, and have that support network.
I think it's good as well to share, like, with the perhaps schools to have support networks as well, and like the mats and things like that. Our school is in a mat, but there's not many of the other mat schools around us, but we're now starting to forge those relationships and friendships with schools that are close to us but in a different mat, and just being able to, and to hear that they're having similar issues to us and it's not just us by ourselves. That's always reassuring as well, and good for well-being. I think, just hearing that you're not the only one who's got concerns about that actually another music teacher in another school, they've got
and I think
that
that's true as well in senior leadership. If you're in leadership, you should find other leaders, and go visit other schools, see what other schools are doing. I think it's quick, isn't it, to cut out the things that take extra time. But like for me, CPD is really important. And I feel like the more CPD I do, the better teacher I become, the more efficient I become. And therefore, it's going to benefit my teaching. But it'd be very easy for me to go, I'm not going to do that course because that's in the evening. I'm not going to do that course because it's the weekend. But actually, that's the bit that makes me a better teacher and makes my teaching better. So it's kind of finding the balance with it. That's partly why I'm doing my apprenticeship, because I have to log 6 hours off the job. I do that anyway, so I might as well count it towards something. But I find it really interesting kind of researching and understanding and making my work life better in terms of what I'm delivering and what I'm doing and how I'm tweaking it. Like everything that I do is to benefit the kids, but to make my life easier when I teach.
Yeah, I don't think I told you I'm doing my MPQH.
You are, yeah. Exciting times.
And I'm really excited. So I've just started that, and we're having seminars with other senior leaders.
And it's having that network to talk to people.
And we've got a face-to-face day in April, which I'm really excited about. And there'll be coffee and people and sandwiches. And
we've forgotten that with COVID. I did not have mine when I did my previous course because the day that we were meant to have our face-to-face day, tube strikes. Or train strikes. So ours did not happen, but hopefully yours will. I'm really gutted that mine didn't happen.
We don't have many trains down in Cornwall, so
it's quite. If that one strikes, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But there's also the other aspect of making sure you look after yourself. This is a lecture that I give my trainee teachers. I'm like,
do you listen to it yourself?
I do. Get your flu jab.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If you're a school leader, like get the nurses in and get them all done. Because in theory,
get your COVID jab now as well.
Well, the cost of getting a flu jab versus the cover, surely it's got to be worth it. And then also eat your body weight in garlic and ginger, and drink lots of orange juice. Chocolate on the side. But they're the things. Literally, my trainer was like, prior to breaking everything and going off sick, she was like, "You're never sick.
You need more milk." I
need to work on my balance. But generally I don't go off because of colds and things, because I eat healthy. And I think that's the thing as well. The more tired, it's that cycle. The more tired you become, the worse you eat, the more you eat rubbish. And actually you've got to look after yourself. You're not exercising.
You're not physically tired, so you're not sleeping. And
you're binge watching telly, you're watching on your phone, so you're not sleeping as well.
Things at night.
It's you have to put yourself first and look after yourself. And it's the little things, creating those little habits that are going to put you in a better place to not be to the point where you get to the holidays and you sleep for a week and then you've got to go again. You want to be able to be in a point where you get to the holidays and you actually have energy and can enjoy your life, because you deserve to be able to enjoy your free time as well.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be
Don't feel
all
guilty
about
about
work and not feel guilty. She says typing her own CV. But
yeah, I managed a whole another objective during the news.
it is a work-life balance, but you've got to work out what fits within your schedule, what is okay without making a negative impact on your life. If it is having a negative impact on your life, you need to address it. You need to talk to your senior leaders. If you're a senior leader, you need to talk to people higher up. You need to be able to talk to other people and find out how to correct the balance, because it shouldn't be that we're burning ourselves out and leaving education. Education is the best job in the world and we love it. And granted, as our mother retired at 73, we would like to leave teaching before then.
Although, as we just said, at someone coming up to 75, she's just applied to become an exam invigilator. So she's going back into schools.
But she's doing it because she enjoys it. And she's doing it because it's manageable for her and it's a life balance for her. But
yeah. How many of her grandchildren does she teach lessons to online?
Oh yes, she
all
does
the time.
Yeah, but my son does chocolate bottom maths after school. I mean, I would get into maths if I got chocolate bottom maths, but I think it's important that you have the balance, and that's the longevity of it. I mean, she almost left teaching when she had to learn to do online teaching in COVID at the age of 70. Like, that was tough. And
you got her through that.
But I think it is.
Then she taught me how to do it.
And then she taught you how to do it. But it's about adapting. We are good at adapting, but we need to adapt in a way that is making our lives better and easier, and not consuming more. And that's the thing with the pressure of this idea that these pay improvements coming out of school budgets, that's going to mean school cuts. That's going to mean more workload for everybody else, and that's why we stand for ourselves as teachers, and know that what we're doing is really important, but we as people are really important as well, and we need to work as a team and make sure that we're doing the things in our home lives as well as our work lives to make sure that we've got that balance and we're doing it well.
Absolutely. You need to do it for yourself and for your students. Taking a bit of time for you, doing things for you, makes you a better teacher. Now we just need to remember to do it too.
We need to do it ourselves. Highly recommend the freezing cold sea dip.
Oh yeah.
Next time I might swim.
That's no wetsuits, by the way.
No full wetsuit. Everyone on the beach.
You are allowed a bikini.
You are allowed to wear something, but no wetsuits. It was cold, but it was enjoyable. It really cleared the mind.
If you can find somewhere where you can walk out and there's a cafe.
Yes.
That's, yeah.
It's again, as a teacher, it's all about preparation.
Yes.
Having the dry robe or beach towel when you get out, having somewhere to have a nice coffee or hot chocolate to warm yourself up afterwards. Definitely. It's preparation and enjoying life, doing things that make you feel happy. And
I'm not sure your face looked very happy.
I didn't at the time. I was more happy when I got out than when I went in. But I feel happy now. I can still feel I'm still slightly shaking from the cold. I don't know whether I've quite warmed up to the core.
Your core temperature's gone.
My core temperature isn't quite there yet. But
Hannah, you only dipped your shoulders under. I swam out to the point.
I did a little paddle. But on the most part, I do feel I feel better for it.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't...
So awake.
Yeah, exactly. I feel healthy. I feel more awake. We prepped. We cooked a lovely home cooked meal this morning, so we've got that
because we knew we
ready to go.
Well, so that this is in the oven right now.
So we're not feeling too tired to do that, and we're going to definitely get a good night's sleep after that. That's for sure.
Maybe to help balance our, as in your and mine, work-life balance more, you need to move to Cornwall. And then, I could cook one night, you could cook the next night.
Yeah.
And we could force each other to go swimming.
The only thing is you have 6-foot rugby children that would eat 5 times the amount of what I would cook in a week.
That doesn't help my work-life balance either, my shopping bill with those two.
And that's the thing. It is really hard to do it all and prioritise yourself. But you've got to not feel guilty doing it. And it's, if again, it's for your family and your children. If you're looking after yourself, then everything else will become easier.
One thing that my oldest has just gone to university, and that was really, really tough as well. But he's not too far away, actually. He's in Exeter. And that forces me, if I want to, sometimes I go up and see him play rugby, and that, again, that's forcing me to take like 5 or 6 hours out of teaching to be able to go and watch that. Although the last time my husband drove and I sat in the back marking coursework on my laptop, and we drove up to Exeter and then back again, and I was really cramped up because my other son's huge as well, so he was in the front seat. I'm getting there roundabout. Anyway, so and then the next morning, because I'd been marking on my laptop in this really funny angle, I literally couldn't get out of bed because I'd done my back in.
It's the thing, we put ourselves through it, but it's, and I was going to say,
it wasn't even coursework for my subject either. I was helping someone else out.
And that's the thing, we all help each other, and we're always, I feel as a teacher, you're never done. There's never a point where you're like, oh, I've got a free moment. Shall I just sit here? Shall I do something? It's always like, I can do more. I can help people. I can get ahead of the next week. Then there'll be something else. It's really difficult to kind of manage it all and work it out. But even like things like putting yourself I've seen the productivity timers where you put them on and you're like, right, I'm going to mark for this amount of time. That's all I'm going to mark. When that goes off, I am going home.
And do you do that, or do you say, I'll just do one more?
I generally, since I've done that, I get done in the time.
Oh, do you?
And it has helped me work quicker and focus for that small amount of time. And so you can put, I haven't done this, but I've heard of things, you can put apps on your phone, or there's like a cage that you can buy with a number that you code, you can put it in, and you put it in and it basically won't unlock for an hour. So you're not allowed to get to it. So
You're marking?
I will. No, I wish. My phone, so I'm not distracted. So I get my marking done. So it very much depends on kind of working out the best way to be most efficient, so that you're not. And that's the thing. It's very easy to go down a rabbit hole and get completely lost and give more of your time to teaching than necessarily teaching deserves, and not feel guilty about it. But actually stopping yourself and being like, no, that's the time, that's my cut off, I go home now. If it's not done, it's not done. And keep making sure you have that balance, whether it be that you leave. I quite often have a day where I leave everything at school. I don't even bring home my planner, so I'm not even tempted to look, so that I can have a full switch off that night. It's quite nice.
One of my colleagues, Senko colleagues, has sort of said to me, she's actually taken her Gmail account, which is her school email account, she's taken it off her phone for the Easter holidays. But then she quickly said, however, if you need anything, I'm on text.
But that is it. I turned off all my notifications, so I don't get any notifications except for text. So none of my other apps send me notifications.
But you can still check them.
But I can still check them. But it means that I don't check them. I do get anxiety when I feel like, I haven't checked it for a while. And I get anxiety before I open it. But then generally I look at it and I'm like, oh, okay, I haven't missed anything. That anxiety was over nothing.
My difficulty with that is social worker might try and get hold of me.
Yeah. And it is like, we give our lives to this job because we love it and we want to do best for these children. But it's also really important that we do our best for ourselves and our families as well.
Yeah, we do better for the children if we look after ourselves, don't we?
So on that note, I'm going to wish you all a lovely Easter holidays.
And
relax. Go get into some cold water. Add some ice to it if in a bucket in the garden if you have to, if you're not near the coast.
Be careful how you get into the bucket.
Don't break anything in the process of your well-being, is my top tip. But do enjoy your holidays, and I hope you have a lovely Easter.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.